Yes, this is a huge video. Sorry, I want this project done and finished to move on and not have too many other vlogs clogging up my video list, so getting it all over with in one swoop. If it helps, I'll have timestamps in the description below so you can jump back if you take a break, or, well, don't watch this video because I sound tired through half of it. I'm gonna figure out a better format next year, or not do it next year. Well, whatever. Last one of these vlog videos for this year. Whew, because I really want to focus more on my proper projects. But anyway, questions in this video don't really have a specific theme. I collected as many of the leftover requests as I could find. Possibly I still overlooked a few. I'm terrible at organizing and these questions are scattered everywhere. So yeah, sorry. Guess I can answer the forgotten questions in the comments below or something. Oh well, here we go. Rhino Benka. Do you consider the current head of Sonic Team as a reliable source of information or even as a good head of Sonic Team? Iizuka-san. Oh, well, don't know the man in person, although I did see him in person once at Summer of Sonic. So don't know if how he is on the work floor, if he's a good manager or such. Then again, considering the lack of consistency and focus on the projects, as a director or producer, it seems to me he lets the separate development teams do their own thing on their own accord and then just smashes everything together, so I'm sure he's fun as a boss, as in he lets you have a lot of freedom and do whatever you want. If that leads to a good product, I don't know. But again, that's conjecture. I don't really know anything real about his managing skills. All I know that other Sega super developers like Yuji Naka and Yu Suzuki have been revealed to have a bit of an ego, and then whenever I play games under their leadership, I do always feel their presence, which I don't really have with Iizuka. So, but I'll get back to that. As a source of information, I don't take him very serious. He always comes across to me as a politician. He always says what you want to hear, but in such a vague way as possible that he doesn't really say anything at all. And changes his mind a lot, so digging up quotes for him from old interviews, trying to piece together about his preferences or his philosophy on the series is meaningless. He'll change his mind in the next video or interview. As expected from the guy in charge of a series that's so bouncing all over the place. As Sonic. And a few times he does really say something, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. It's not Generations 2, yeah, because it's Sonic Forces, and it has one new character with different gameplay, because sequels are never sequels when they add one new element or something. But whatever. It's driving me nuts he's constantly referring to modern Sonic's gameplay in Sonic Forces as 3D boost. 3D boost, 3D boosts! Yeah, nice try, buddy. I already read journalists mention modern Sonic's gameplay switch to 2D again. If I didn't already know, I'd be fucking pissed off if I found this out by myself later on. So again, you can't really trust him to really address specific issues or be really honest and clear about the details. He condenses everything to that bare minimum surface level and then just says buzzwords that sound positive but don't really reflect what's going on. The devil is in the details and he never discusses details, so he's a useless source of information for me. And that's just talking about the gameplay and the general concept of the series in general. Whenever people ask him questions about specific character or plot points in interviews, it's even more whatever, quick excuses. Which, to be fair, is something I also do a lot when people point out plot holes in my work. And of course, in a world as cartoony and abstract as Sonic, it's relatively easy to explain everything with a silly excuse. But yeah, as for being the head of Sonic Team, he's a double-edged sword, in my personal interpretation. Again, I don't really know him, so there's all conjecture I get from listening to him talk. Others talk about him and the finished products and the finished results he produces. To me, it comes across like he has a lot of great ideas, lots of creativity, and can inject tons of energy into his projects when he focuses on his ideas and concepts. Then they really pop and become larger than life, making his games more exciting and spectacular than most other video games. And that's great when he has focus, but he gets distracted so often or can't focus on one core idea, and then his hyperactive energy and hurricane of ideas and concepts just becomes one giant colliding pile of confusion. He also comes across to me as having that Leonardo da Vinci thing, that he loses interest in his plans and ideas right before really finishing it and just jumps into the next project. So ends up getting more respect on the general ideas and concepts he has, or possibly one or two technical feats, but rarely, if ever, on the full product as a whole. Kind of reminds me of my love for Sonic Adventure, that I like it more for what it represents, or it's trying to do more than what it really is as a technical execution. And again, to be honest and self-reflective, that's one of my personal sins as well. When I got something almost finished, I also would just want to finish it and gone and move on to the next project. I rarely, if ever, bother with polishing or get really rested and irritated if people ask me to clean up the details. I seem to recognize a lot of my own personal traits in him. That, or I'm projecting, that's also possible. Who knows? Anyway, so this is why, like, when Sonic Mania is announced to suffer delay, I don't mind. I know exactly what Mania is, what it's trying to do, and that's being handled with someone who's a perfectionist, who's constantly tweaking and looking and testing and fixing things up. So giving him more time will probably result in a better product, even if my caveman brain will probably barely notice the improvements. Iizuka-san, on the other hand, I can conjecture, but I feel like if you give this dude 3 months extra development time on Sonic Forces, he wouldn't use that to tighten up the game, but instead would use the opportunity to throw in a bunch of extra wisps he didn't have time to implant in the game yet. And then runs out of time before he could actually make a new level that uses those new wisps, so instead just shoves them into a different level or something. Which is why, if Sonic Forces will be announced to have been delayed, I won't be very reassured that it will become a better game for it. One final weird thing about Iizuka. Usually the genius super programmers have a specific touch and feel to them, like a Will Wright, a John Romero, a Hideo Kojima, a Miyamoto. Like, you can often feel their involvement because they have a certain approach to games. John Romero is a hyperactive rock and roll rock star guy. His games are fast, gruesome, and intense. Will Wright is more the quiet observer and explorer, and his games are more about screwing around with simulators. Yu Suzuki, that I brought up before, I often have a sense that he programs his games in a way that if you don't play it correctly, it feels very stiff, alien, and awkward. But then you slide more into how you're meant to play, and then you finally control the game in a way that you're meant to. That early weird feeling suddenly becomes much more tight and focused. I don't know how to explain, but I had that a lot with Virtua Fighter out on Shamu. Whatever, point is, these super developers have aspects you find returning a lot. They have a personal style, a personal personality. Or Yuji Naga. I recently played Rodeo the Sky Soldier, and I can immediately tell it's a Naka game. There's immediately elements that reminds me of Billy Hatcher, Knights, and Sonic Adventure era Sonic games. Like the level design, the type of voice acting, the way you move. But with Iizuka, I don't really have that. He doesn't give me any impression of what qualities an Iizuka game has, other than that it probably have way too many ideas going on. I mean, I know the producer or director doesn't really create the thing, but, you know, like a chef in the kitchen, even if he's not the exact cook, he's probably still tasting what his apprentices are making and ordering to add a little salt or pepper into it, whatever, to create that specific taste that chef represents. So I consider Iizuka kind of like the Asian George Broussard of game design. George Broussard is the guy responsible for Duke Nukem 3D and Duke Nukem Forever. Notorious that he's constantly distracted by new trends and ideas and is constantly revisiting and restarting his projects to throw in entirely new ideas and impressions he suddenly got, regardless if they fit or not. Which, again, is why I'm not sure if delaying some of the games under his command is such a good idea. We'll just get a Duke Nukem Forever. That said, I don't think throwing him out of Sonic Team is a good idea either, because regardless of his lack of focus and hyperactivity caused a lot of the problems, it's also what sparks and created Sonic Souls to a degree as well. There's a certain energy that Sonic games have that I don't see in other games, so I fear that if you get rid of Iizuka, other Sonic games would become like Sonic Boom. More focused, clean, finished, inoffensive, and boring as hell. He's like a steam train, keep him on the rails, and it's a smooth and awesome sailing. But when he loses focus, things start flying and crashing. So, Project 1114. How about pets? What kind of pets do you have? What do you like about them? How do they affect you? I'm terrible with pets. My parents put a goldfish in my room once when I was younger, and every single day I relearned for the first time that I had one and then promptly forgot about it again. I'm just someone who's always busy, gaming, thinking, animating, exercising, whatever. Whatever I'm doing it, and I have very little of any awareness of my surroundings. If it was just me, I'd never have pets. I'm always busy with projects or whatever, not looking for companionships. But my girlfriend wanted one, so I preferred cats. They're more self-reliant and don't have to take walkies all the time, so less of a bother, or so I thought. But sadly, I got two hyperactive cats that constantly demand my attention. That said, when there's a fluffy pet around, I'm nice to it, and I love to cuddle and pet them. Especially when I'm bored and forced to be in a social situation, and pets are always great to pretend you belong in the room even though you're bored out of your mind and just want to run away. But I'm a little too nice to them, overfeed them, hence why they're constantly demanding my attention for more candy. I'm terrible with discipline too. And now my girlfriend prefers to get a dog instead, so that'll be fun. The dog's totally gonna be the boss of me. I have zero discipline or authority, so I'm too busy doing things. I don't have time to bossing people or animals around, or dogs or cats. Here's candy now, buzz of. English Giraffe. Perhaps your thoughts on children cartoons, TV shows like the Steven Universe, handling more mature topics such as depression, anxiety, loss, and abuse. Doc Walker recently made a video called Is Weird the New Brilliant? I fully agree on that one. that video more or less stated a decent answer for your question. Personally, I think when a show is very realistic and has real humans, the story also tends to be realistic and restrained, so can't go deep and stay on the surface level a lot, or at least has to be much more subtle about things. But when you have a show that's ugly and weird and requires the audience to have a lot more patience and willpower to sit through and bond with the characters, it leaves you with more freedom and room to hit deeper, harder, and weirder stuff than realistic shows ever can. Everything is already weird and comfortable and a little abstract, so tackling unusual and dangerous topics fits in more naturally than in a more pleasant and natural looking show. Shows like Duckman, Steven Universe, BoJack Horseman, or even just Terry Gilliam stuff or something. It's just easier to accept harder concepts when a show looks a little rough, and them being cartoons with a lot of alien elements to them. They can also work those harder themes more naturally into their stories by using symbolic imagery and such. They just have a lot more freedom and can fluently work misery, discomfort, and the deeper vague feelings of your mind into a plot hole than clean, pleasant shows can. And for whatever reason, as soon as a show looks more abstract and stylized, people immediately assume it's for children. So yeah. Not to mention, normal shows are primarily a comedy or drama, or well, they have a very strict formula. So when they tackle complicated themes, they are reworked to work into that format of a show. But weirder, more organic shows don't just make anxiety or abuse or whatever merge into that format. They can actually make those concepts literally be the scene, be the episode. Like Ren and Stimpy or Invader Zim or something can literally just take an uncomfortable feeling you have and literally make that the episode of the show instead of just something they're dealing with in a normal story format. They can make the viewer of the show literally experience those emotional states directly instead of just having characters talk about them, because a cartoon acting out its emotional state feels natural, where having a realistic show suddenly becomes stylized to represent an emotional state would probably look very awkward and forced. But I tend to think that, besides kids' cartoons, everything that brings in a layer of symbolism or abstract thinking to the mix is usually better in tackling the darker corner of the human mind. Terry Gilliam stuff, horror movies, hard science fiction, that stuff. And ironically, children are way more accepting to weird stuff or looking at fictional work with a more open mind and are more willing to accept and relate to weird stuff than adults who are much more rusted into the I need to do my job, I need to make money, I need to survive in the real world mindset that they usually can't really handle that stuff anymore. Andre wanted to know your thoughts on Super Mario Bros. Z and if you think the Sonic series could benefit from some of its aspects. Sorry, I haven't seen much of it. I know it has fantastic animation, but in the early 2000s, there were so many Dragon Ball Z-type character versus character animations on Newgrounds that I got wary of that genre. Don't even know if Mario Bros. Z is really that, but it dissuaded me to check it out. Not to mention, I have to keep myself delusional about my own animation skills to keep going. Watching incredible animation like that will probably make me give up on my stuff. Not to mention, recently I really got irritated that Mario and Sonic are constantly put together. I don't think that's really healthy for the Sonic series. That fried on being not Mario. I don't blame the Super Mario Bros. Z thing for this. It was made way before brainless Nintendo crowd invaded the Sonic base and are now finally throwing away everything remotely rough and rock and roll about the series out to make it looking as spotless and nice and clean and proper as any soulless, dull but perfectly executed Nintendo property. But yeah, that means in this point of time, I can't really stand seeing them teamed up together over and over. Yeah, not a very satisfying answer, I know, sorry. From what I've seen, it looks really good, but contains a direction I'm not super interested in with either the Dragon Ball stuff or with Mario. Xess Master X, any thoughts on The World Ends With You? Haven't played it, sorry. Gameplay looks a little too complex for me. Art style looks cool, but no, I tried it a bit, but it didn't immediately grab me. I fear my entire knowledge of the game is its cameo in Kingdom Hearts. Melting Man 234, Vectorman dissected, Vectorman, not much to say about that. Yeah, I played the games. They're a little too difficult for me. Love the sound effects, really intense, and the lightning effects for a Sega Genesis game, especially how the dark swamp in the second game lights up when you're shooting. Music is nice, but I never got deep and far enough to really have any complex thoughts. Sorry. Shadow Hedgehog asks, I'm starting to grow fatigue of large movie franchises and series, so I have a few questions. Is it a good idea to make a successful game movie into a franchise? If it is, should it be finite? If so, how many entries should there be before it loses its drive? Why would you even want to have a new franchise or old franchise if there's already an equivalent to it? Do you think that because of overexposure to one or a few franchises, one may lose enjoyment of entertainment as a whole? And is it possible that you can get too old to enjoy entertainment anymore? I don't necessarily mean the actual age, just the years you spent appreciating entertainment. Ooh, oof. I'm the wrong guy to ask. I don't really mind mega franchises and big sequels and stuff, but okay. Depends on the game or movie. Some movies are made to be franchises, like Indiana Jones, Sherlock Holmes, James Bond. Those just scream episodic adventures. Others only work once, like Citizen Kane or Hamlet. Really depends. If so, should it be finite? Again, depends. With anime, for example, I prefer those to be finite, because those shows always carry a large sense of progression and continuity. They're going somewhere, you're tuning in to see how our heroes will grow, so with those, I prefer a shorter series with an end. I only watch anime that have 12 or 25 episodes or so. Endless anime like Pokemon or One Piece or Detective Conan drive me mad. So if a mystery or a character growth is vital to the show, then yeah, be finite. However, then you have Looney Tunes shorts or cartoons, Johnny Bravo and such, crazy cartoons, just heroes on adventures, truly episodic things. In that case, they can go on as long as the creators have inspiration. Would I want a new franchise or old one if there's an equivalent to it? That's a tough question, really tough question. Sometimes I do. Sometimes something is just so good that someone else's take on it could give it more new life. But yeah, I think our brains aren't equipped with the ability to remember much if media starts resembling each other too much. The first one is always the one you remember. The one that made the impact. Kind of like Power Rangers always remembered on the first incarnation. Again, really depends. Depends on the motivation of the creator, I suppose. If the creator is like, hey, this product is pretty neat, but it's missing some extra elements. If I was making a product like that, it would be much better. Then you might get something cool. But yeah, if it's a marketing decision, like, hey, this product is doing well, let's copy it, then you're probably in trouble. Do I think overexposure may cause your entertainment to go down? I think there have been studies about that the brain regards time and excitement and life as a percentage. So the more experience you have, the less impact something has. The older you are, the shorter each time unit seems. The more you went through the same experience, the more it starts to fade. So yeah, overexposure will probably do that. Hasn't happened to me much yet, though. I guess everyone has a different dose. Can I enjoy entertainment that I already experienced many times? Well, I can. Sex or Ice Cream haven't lost impact. I can still watch some movies or play games I played a ton as a kid. Then again, thing is, I'm rarely super focused on my entertainment, so I only pay half attention to movies or play games in short bursts. Never finish them 100%. Maybe that's why they last longer with me. Also, it helps to take a break here and there and just come back later, much later. But I don't know. I fear I'm just entirely different than you in regards of consuming media, I suppose. You're becoming too old and smart to enjoy pop culture while I'll seem to be remain stupid and childish for the rest of my life. Hooray! Blast are the stupid. And I guess you're like Stan from South Park when he starts to lose his interest in everything. Mr. Retrospective asks, what are your views on the overabundance of crossovers nowadays in movies, TV shows, comics with different companies, like with Batman meeting the Ninja Turtles? Are we getting carried away, or is everything fine the way it is? Oh, I am a little cautious with it. I'm a little cautious with it, because it's making entertainment a little too meta for my taste. I have to admit the new Lego Batman movie was a little bit tiring, and how many reference and crossovers they threw in that didn't have much time to breathe. Everything is just kind of there. Although, to be fair, I've done stuff like that myself in the past, like Movie Madness. It's fun, but yeah, gotta handle it with care. As occasional events, it's great, though. That Sonic and Mega Man Archie crossover was kind of wasted a lot of awesome characters by being crammed into one tiny story. Bit of a shame, because sometimes it felt like I was more watching the artist's fan art girly of several characters more than I was really reading a story or really seeing those characters interact. I guess it depends on what kind of media you're using. Comic books have only that many panels to use. But in a video game, then I really love giant crossovers, because video games you can spread the focus and time spent with everything a lot more. So, like the Lego Dimensions games, where everything gets their time in the sun. And like movies have such a rapid pace, are so reliant on flow and constantly moving. That's not really the right place to put in endless crossover characters. Shimaksu, Invader Zim, please talk about Zim. Invader Zim, yeah, I watched it. Great show, wonderful example of the wonders of animation. Creators really crammed all their frustration and discomfort of society into one packed cartoon. I'm kind of surprised I like it. On the surface, it would seem the show is way too miserable and negative for my taste because it's a very cynical show. All characters are miserable assholes or utterly stupid, and everyone that even showcase any form of positivity is likely to suffer a terrible fate before long, except Gur. But it works. I kind of like it. Guess the delusional madness of Zim and Gur carried the load. But yeah, it's a masterpiece in translating discomfort and hatred for society into cartoon form. The sequence where Zim sits in a public bus for the first time and it just isn't moving, there's annoying noises and it's uncomfortable and nothing happens and the distress just ramps up. That's such a perfect portrayal of anxiety. I don't have that much contempt for society or suffer that much anxiety, but still I recognize that. Third episode of the show is the one where Zim, Dip, Gur, and Gaz have to recollect the same story that gets completely distorted through their delusional minds. Already brought that up, that episode was a large inspiration for the Sonic Adventure in Minutes cartoon. I wish Dip's dad talked a lot more. I love the guy's voice. Host! And stupid pointless trivia. At some point 10 years ago, I did write a script for an animation I was going to make about Invader Zim, but never got to it. It was how appropriate after the last few questions. It was a crossover with Chicken Little, the Hollywood version of Chicken Little. I think the idea was to clash the extreme bleak negative misery of Invader Zim with the relentless positive optimism of that Chicken Little bit, where they're all hyper competent and amazing. But yeah, I reread the script some time ago and it wasn't super good. It's 10 years old at this point, so probably not going to happen. Mostly recycled jokes that came straight from the original series anyway. Oh well. Oh, and right, there's a new movie coming. Did not see that coming. Not sure what made Nickelodeon suddenly change their minds. Maybe the success of Samurai Jack, but who knows? Suax, talk about vague endings for games. Right, so Suax wanted me to talk about vague endings to games that leave the player hanging a bit, like Silent Hill does a lot, or Mass Effect 3, and Dead Souls. Well, not familiar enough with Dead Souls to know about that ending. So yeah, endings in a video game when they're vague, if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, depends per game, I suppose. Sometimes a vague ending is good, like with Ico or Shadow of the Colossus. Those stories were a lot more impressions and feelings and vague concepts. But in RPGs, I absolutely hate it. You spend months and months on end bonding with the characters, working hard to get them through the story, so you need a good closure for games like that. Man, Final Fantasy VII's ending annoyed me with the, oh my god, laser beams, what's going to happen? The end. But what? Okay. Fortunately, there's Evangelion and such, like, as a sequel. But that took years. When Final Fantasy VII was new, we didn't know there was going to be a sequel. Final Fantasy never did that back then. And oh man, Phantasy Star 2. No, there's a slap in the face ending. Save the world! Stop the evil world-destroying brain computer or whatever. Bunch of assholes come in, challenge the heroes. Our heroes suit up, get their weapons, say a badass battle quote, rush toward the battle and ending. End credits. Oh, guess they all died or something. Great, so you make me level up and gear up and go through from endless challenges to make it out alive, just for the game to take the control out of your hands, decides to play the final boss on your behalf, fucks up, gets you killed, shrugs off and walks off. Fuck you for playing the game. Yeah, thanks. Ah, Bolivian army endings. Although I hear the Japanese version mentioned the heroes did win. But again, not much help for when you play the game back in the 90s. And nope, that's not a cliffhanger for a future game, that's your real ending. And Mass Effect. That game is all about letting the player make its own decisions. You can choose to date your assassin, you can choose to spare lives, love people, kill people. All about the player options. You want the ending to be the culmination of all your choices, but instead, the exact opposite happens and it forces you to into one direction. I never really played Mass Effect myself, so I don't really know what it's like. But I did play a similar game with a similar theme, Fahrenheit. A game sold on the idea that it's an interactive story, a murder mystery with several endings where you can make up your own way across. Great concept, but you'll quickly discover that the game only really has 2 actual endings. The other endings are usually just elaborate game over screens. And the hero never found out what happened. The end. And the hero died. The end. Yeah, great ending. But the worst part is where your ex-girlfriend is captured and put on a death trap. So I try to save her, screw her up, she dies. So I try again, and she dies again, and try again, and she dies again. I look up online how the heck I'm supposed to save her, but nope, she always dies in that chapter. No way around it. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff you want in a game that's all about choosing your own ending. But that's not really ambiguity, that's more a lack of choice in the matter. For horror stories, I think it's better not to have too much closure. Horror is all about the unknown, so Silent Hill is best when it's vague and implied. You don't want to walk into town without, oh, demon so-and-so is here, oh, he's going to do this and this, so I just need to find a magical MacGuffin and stop him. That's not point. Point is fear, uncertainty, terror. And that's always the frustrating part about mysteries, especially supernatural ones. They're great when you don't know the answer, when they're just weird mysteries and secrets. But as soon as you do get an answer, it's aliens, oh, it's demons, oh, it's the government, oh, it's a science project. It immediately deflates everything. It's just it's just one of those things again. Okay, whatever. Mysteries are no longer interesting when there's a clean-cut answer. You want hints and suggestions, but never an actual explanation. Got that with Stephen King stories a lot. The build-up is awesome, but as soon as things start to get explanations, it's just, I suppose that's why the X-Files keep beating around the bush, or why shows like Lost seem to be written to be more about endless plot twists than it generally cares about leading to a reveal. It's a weird contradictory thing where searching the truth is more interesting than actual knowing the truth. It's the chase that's interesting, not the result. Kind of reminds me of this running joke kind of thing in the Sherlock Holmes books, the originals, where Sherlock Holmes was always complaining at Watson for being so sensational and emotional driven with his stories, where Sherlock wanted his stories to represent his own cold, clinical way of thinking. But then in the final books, when Holmes finally does get to write his own story, he sheepishly admits that he just has to take Watson's approach to writing anyway, because writing a mystery story is oh, I knew right away he was dead. Oh, you can already see the poison. Oh, it's obviously going to be this. Oh, how boring. If the entire story is like that, it wouldn't be very satisfying to read. Although it could be hilariously funny, but I doubt Holmes would have that level of self-awareness. Esteban Avila, could you talk about Nier, Evangelion, and or your family? I like Sonic. Wow, that was random. Never played Nier. Doesn't look like my type of game. Evangelion, funny thing, it was the first anime I bought on DVD, and this was the only anime I ever saw where Pokemon and Samurai Pizza Cats and such. It didn't really have much of a continuity. So I didn't know anime were super heavy on continuity and story arcs yet. I got the last DVD for the final episodes, and Evangelion has a really, really, really random and abstract ending. I'm not sure if I understood it better or worse than people actually familiar with the show, coming into these final episodes without prior knowledge of what the show was about. Anyway, got not much to say. I love the intro. My family, what about them? I got 2 parents and a sister. Dad's a security officer at a hydraulic cylinder factory. Well, used to. He's in between jobs now. Mom's working in a rest home for people with dementia. Always got fun stories to tell. Got a 2-year-old sister. Got a 2-year-older sister. Oh my goodness, it kills me if you hear that. She loves horses and got her own. Heck, she's an animal lover in general, especially when they're dangerous and love to attack. From ferrets that love biting your feet. I had to buy shoes with metal soles just for them bastards. To her very own snake. Well, okay, it's her boyfriend's pet snake, but I'm sure she would have gotten her own eventually. She also has her very own pet monkey. Oh wait, that's not a monkey, that's my nephew. Delano, 4 years old already. Time flies. Mate Great Gaming, your overall favorite, least favorite games. The last questions, but probably the longest one to answer. Okay, so I'll give a top 10 of my favorite games with a quick review why. Only one game per franchise to keep it varied. Then a couple least favorite games. I don't have as many, as I don't spend much time dwelling on games I don't like, unless I have a very specific reason to keep hanging on. So, here we go. 10 favorite games in no particular order. Tony Hawk Downhill for the DS. Probably my all-time favorite. I'm bored for a couple minutes. I need to play something real quick game. It's the DS version I'm talking about, not the Wii PlayStation 2 version. They took out the arcade mode and only have a stupid mission mode. And the Game Boy Advance version is interesting as a technical showcase of 3D on the Game Boy, but dull as a game itself. No. It's the DS version, and particularly the Jam mode I care about. Go down a slope, score as many points as possible. That's my favorite combo system of the Tony Hawk series. The more combos you string, the faster points rack up, but the more stable your character becomes. And racing off a slope creates more of a dynamic gameplay style and a sense of urgency than regular Tony Hawks do. Jazz Jackrabbit 2. 2 words, level editor. Most easy to use level editor I ever saw up until Mario Maker, I guess. But even then, this is Sonic the Hedgehog with a hint of Mega Man gameplay, so that's double victory over Mario's gameplay. Spent hours screwing around with this. It's awesome stuff, and it has great music too. Duke Nukem 3D. Free words. Level editor. Again, although where with Jazz it's me making levels, here it's mostly me playing other people's levels, and there's a ton of them. I never figured out how to make my own levels, a little too complicated for me, but I don't know, I prefer 90s level design in shooters. Love Duke Nukem's real world setting opposed to the abstract bases in Doom. And I love the impact and intensity the weapons have. Aliens really fly off when you blast them. And downloaded a couple mods and graphical enhancements, so you get 3D models and modern lighting in Duke 3D, and it's all fresh and new again. It's great. Skies Arcadia. They call the game a cliché storm, as in that the story is almost entirely made of nothing but clichés, but it's doing it in such a glorious and pleasant way. It's a game that teaches you exactly why these things have become clichés, because they're so awesome and they're handled by people who know what they're doing. You got your air pirates, your typical hero journey, Star Wars type story with your princesses chased by evil empires, chasing after artifacts. All cliche, all awesome. It's warm, it's pleasant, it's optimistic, plain fun. Close together with Granny as one of my favorites, as my ultimate feel-good, happy-go-lucky RPG game. Mystical Ninja starring Guilmon for Nintendo 64. Probably the closest you get me to liking a Zelda-type game. I'll have a soft spot for 3D platformers with RPG elements, and this is one. I like the cartoony ancient Japan setting, and I like the level design. It's doing the thing where it's usually very easy to see where you need to go. There's a linear path leading to the next destination, but there's a lot of open optional spaces that you can explore your own record if you want to. It doesn't have the best soundtrack of the series. That honor goes to either Gambar Guilmon 2 on the Super Nintendo or Adventures of Guilmon on Nintendo 64. Also a part 2. But in terms of gameplay and game style, I prefer this one. Not a big fan of the comedy, though. But regardless of the specific execution of the comedy, the general mood and concept it creates is great. Bad guys want to turn the world into a giant musical, or you have levels like a giant submarine that they're now using as a sushi factory. It's great comedy, provided they don't actually make jokes. Then it's cringe. Suikoden 5. If Grandy and Skies Arcadia are my cliché kiddie happy RPGs, this is my more dramatic, mature, heavy story RPG stories. Lots of stuff I love about the Suikoden series. I love its sense of story progression instead of a free act structure where there's immediately a clear bad guy and goal. It's a story that progresses in small jumps. You're constantly stuck in small situations that keep escalating, growing, evolving into bigger and more complicated situations. Heroes win or lose. Plot twists are never big, rock-pulling moments out of nowhere, but clever story and character arcs are slowly evolving and organically grow a move. I love how villains are usually very subtle and human. Unless they're meant to be stupid, but then that still works into the story. Oh look, after the bad guys Mooks failed their mission and lost the battle, he doesn't feed them to the sharks. Instead, he thanks them for their efforts, shares his observation of what he learned from the battle, he changes his tactics and gives his Mooks a different position in the army, where their skills and weaknesses are better utilized. Wow, a villain who thinks and learns and pays attention Instead, he's villainous because he's actually doing bad things, or he's extremely racist or biased or has the wrong priorities, but still at heart he's trying to save his country, or at least promising things so it still makes sense why people would follow him, which I never have any idea why anyone would follow someone like Ganondorf or something. Oh, you're going to turn my town into a big wasteland? Yay, I'm going to be your soldier. Whee! I love how this series managed to take elements I hate in other RPGs, but making it work here. Like having the typical, you're the chosen one mystical elements where characters are chosen by true runes to larger-than-life figures in history. But unlike in normal RPGs where it boils down that the glorious good god has chosen you, or evil Satan is choosing a true hero and true villain for a straight good versus evil battle, this plays it a lot more neutral. Having a true rune doesn't make you the alleged all-glorious hero or all-glorious bad guy. It just gives you the potential, the charisma, the skills to have a big impact on the world if you choose to do so. But the story always puts emphasis that it's the characters themselves making their own decisions. Heck, some of the chosen ones actually end up running away or fleeing from their destiny and just remain side characters off in the distance. The true runes are just tools or curses, just pawns in a larger chess game of life. They're part of the story, but they don't overtake it. As how usually the chosen hero or the ancient resurrected villain basically eliminate any potential good backstory personalities from the main characters. I like the strong sense of continuity the series has, that unlike other RPG series, all the games, all the main console games of Suikoden anyway, take place in the same universe and usually a few years from each other apart. Except the fourth one that takes place 200 years in the past, but whatever. Despite that, every game has its own self-contained main characters and plot, so we can jump in everywhere you want. It's mostly in the optional background characters where there's the connections and where the games really come to life altogether. I also love how dynamic it is with its story genres. While usually a political war drama, it also often morphs into other genres. You get roped into a Hunt Dracula at his castle type story, or have to enroll and pretend to be students in a university for some kind of wacky school mystery story, or you get lost in underground tunnels when there's a zombie infestation breaking out. And it all fits naturally within the main plot, so it doesn't just feel random, it has an impact on the main story as well. Dracula's castle will become your new home base, or you'll recruit Sherlock Holmes type characters, or you'll recruit a Sherlock Holmes type detective to be your informant, or a Arsène Lupin type gentleman thief as your spy. After you had your Scooby-Doo type mystery at the university, you may later use the secret tunnels and hidden passageway you discovered during that adventure to later sneak in your army into town to attack the enemy forces from behind. Add to that in the Japanese writing that puts emphasis on camaraderie and teamwork, creating a much more optimistic and energetic approach to warfare. Not to mention always has a sly sense of humor and creativity on the side. Yet, its sense of humor is strictly under control, so it never overtakes the story and makes it feel like a farce. It's just a pleasant touch of charm, and you got a winner. Suikoden 2 and 5 are my favorites. I think 5 gets a little more the upper hand because I like it has a very long but excellent prologue before the main story starts. But yeah, I don't want to go too deep into all of this. I already spend triple the time than I spend on the other games. So yeah, Suikoden, it's great. Just Cause free. Stupid, dumb action flying around blowing shit up. I also love the setting, so colorful and sunny. Nice Italian towns. Everything's designed to be great and awesome. First, Just Cause is the best soundtrack. Second, Just Cause is the best gameplay. Third, Just Cause is the best setting. I think I go with setting, since gameplay and music is still pretty good. Yakuza 5. Love this series. Japan. Usually I'm not super into mature gangster macho manly stuff, unless it's a parody. Or if it's Japanese, because as soon as it's Japanese, it might as well be a parody. Love the fighting system, that stability and precision of the third-person fighter games, but a lot faster and crazier. Has a great sense of humor, and I like they take the time with the characters and story and let it all build. Although granted, they take it a little too slow sometimes, especially in scenes where the heroes are in mortal danger. It's hilarious how often they just light up a cigar and start having an hour-long conversation, even when the cops are chasing them, or there's a murderer psychopath right behind the corner. I don't think I've witnessed a single character death in this series that didn't either have me laughing hysterically or facepalming myself unconscious. But hey, that's the good thing about Yakuza. Even when it screws up in the most hilarious and amazing way possible, so that's still a point in my book. I have to be honest when it comes to the story. Yakuza 5 wins the prize for being my favorite, largely on the fact that it's the most generous with its locations. One of my only real gripes with the series is that it recycles a lot of its locations, often taking place in the same neighborhood, which has some advantages. You do grow a bond with that neighborhood, and that helps when hero Kazuma Kiryu is supposed to be everyone's friendly neighbor. But getting some new cities to explore here and there would be appreciated, and Yakuza 5 is definitely the most generous with them all. Of them all, with the Iizuka neighborhood from the second game returning, now fully 3D and next-generation graphics, and 3 entirely new cities, 1 extra town in the snow, and a mountain you can explore to hunt on, and a stretch of highway to race on, and a bunch of special mission stages like the junkyard. So a lot more variety this time. After that, it has the funniest missions in the game. I particularly love the fake Santa Claus mission, or when there's so many people slipping over icy streets that it becomes a wacky arcade game where you have to dodge people helplessly sliding across the street walk. But it also has the best story escalation of the series, especially the second chapter that starts as a slow prison drama and then keeps ramping up from full prison revolution, James Bond-style snow scooters chase to escape, which ends in the hero fist fighting a monster bear, and that's all happening even before you get to the main city point of the chapter. The best thing about this game, even on top of all this, is that it proves the Japanese can make every job in the world look equally awesome. Never mind the gangsters and cops and detectives in the previous games. In this one, you're a taxi driver, an idol singer, moneylender, journalist, and hunter, and none of these jobs look any less badass than any Yakuza boss you encounter. So that's great. Mega Man Legends 2. Again, soft spot for 3D platformers with RPG elements. I already did a full dissected video on Mega Man Legends. The other Mega Man games are awesome as well, but the story and atmosphere just elevate Legends to a new level for me. Prefer Legends 2 mostly because the dungeons are more self-contained. Wasn't a big fan of the first game that had all its dungeons weaved together like a Metroid game. Finally, Sonic. Yeah, gee, what's my favorite Sonic game? Depends on what mood I'm in. Sonic 3 Knuckles is my favorite Sonic game when it comes to if I want to experience one from start to finish. It's the best one. It's a full experience. Sonic Generations is my favorite game when I'm looking for a quick buzz, just jumping in to quickly play a level or two. Sonic Avenger 1 is my favorite when I'm more in an atmospheric mood and just want to stroll around and soak up the atmosphere. So, depends. Then, my least favorite games. Okay, before I start, as I said before, when I really hate a game and it's not doing it for me, I just don't give it attention and drop it. So the really, really, really worst games I played, I don't remember them. They piss me off, and I'm off. Got too much to do to bother with bad games. And when I was too young to be as busy as I am now, I had little to no standards and was practically happy with everything, so yeah. So the games that are the least favorite, in my least favorite list, all have something about them that still made me care enough to try and spend a lot of time on them, more than I might have deserved, or they might actually be very good games, but just happen to contain an element that I really, really hate. So with that said, here's my least favorite games list. Tai, the Tasmanian Tiger 2. So this is a game I generally like. In general, Tai 2 is a pretty awesome game. My favorite of the 4 Tai games. Yes, 4. They released a low-budget 2D side-scroller a few years back. Action-packed platformer, running around, boomeranging bad guys, driving through the Australian outback. It's all good. But it has one of my biggest pet peeves, ruining the mood. One thing I hate in games is when there's a mini-game or side activity that's a different genre than the main game, and then they make it extremely difficult. I mean, then I can't beat a fighting game because I'm not good at fighting, or I lose a race in a racing game for not racing well enough. That's one thing, but it's baffling when you can't beat a platform game when it makes you play a different genre mini-game altogether, and it makes that ridiculously hard. Tai 2 already has a karting mini-game, and that's a cool idea, but like most kart racers, it's more frustrating than fun. In fact, I always refuse to call this genre kart racers. I always call them stare helplessly at the screen while your character just gets mercilessly pounded by non-stop indodgeable item simulators. But whatever. The kart racing is optional. But there's also a turret shooting mission, and oh boy, that one isn't optional. Oh no. I got stuck here for weeks. This part is a pain. Have to keep track of your health. You got a timer, you constantly move the sluggish cannon across a very large canvas to search for the enemies, and hope you can hit them. It's ridiculously hard, but you know what the best part is? This happens in the damn tutorial level. The hardest part of the entire game is in the damn tutorial level. That's impressive. So it may not be the worst example of a difficult minigame halting my progress. I was stuck with the damn submarine minigame in Fur Fighter way longer, but at least that happened in the second to last level in that game. In Tai 2, they locked me out of the rest of the game in the freaking tutorial level because of this stupid minigame. Although these days I'm much better at it and can beat it now with not so much trouble. Maybe I just really sucked at it when I was younger. I don't know. But the memories still stand. The rest of the game is awesome. So that makes this irritating segment just more painful. State of Emergency 2. Again, not a bad game, but man, it was the arcade mode that made the first game so awesome. So, State of Emergency was one of those dumb, brainless arcade games. You're a rioter in a mall or in the streets, and you cause havoc, punch people, blow stuff up, you get points, survive as long as possible. It's awesome. There was also a story mode where you do missions, but whatever. It's like the arcade mode again, except boring and forced. So you make a sequel, and then you get rid of the arcade mode. No! I mean, the original is just so great. At least the missions got more elaborate now, like sniper rifle sessions. Yeah, great. Nothing says we completely missed the point of this fast-paced arcade action game than handing you a slow, cumbersome sniper rifle. Hyperdimension Neptunia. Again, not a bad game. More in the category of not my taste at all. Game's mostly here because it's a victim of bad advertising for me. A friend recommended to me for being a video game satire about human representatives of video game consoles, starring an unreleased Sega console girl. It even has Sega's support that the game could use their imagery for references. But just like the Scott Pilgrim comic book, another thing recommended to me for being a video game satire, but I'm just barely ever being interested in its video game concept, other than meaningless references. Hyperdimension Neptunia is mostly interested in being really kawaii and otaku, and getting me on FBI wanted list for pedophilia. Not that I'm that much against that, I can tolerate it to a degree, if it's mixed with some more substantial stuff, but this is pretty much it. The gameplay did look interesting for a dungeon crawler, but there's no towns I can explore, only dungeons, and the RPG battle system seemed extremely convoluted to me, so in the end I just left disappointed. There's a lot of sequels to this game, maybe they got better, but the first game left a very bad first impression, and I never bothered since. Bubsy 2. Yeah, low-hanging fruit, I know. Look, I kinda liked the first game, okay? Yeah, it had some problems, wonky design. Although, honestly, it gets a little better in the later levels that are less open and more focused. They make a little more sense with Bubsy's weaknesses and skill sets. But yeah, wonky game, but in my kid-like mind, it was on par with any proper video game, so I liked it. Funny thing is, everyone I knew who had a Super Nintendo also had this game for it, so for the longest time I thought this game was one of the big Super Nintendo games that everyone had, up in the ranks with Mario and Zelda. Guess I was wrong there. Anyway, yeah, Bubsy 2. So you fixed the thing with giving him more health points, that's great, but then you fucked up everything else and making the levels incomprehensible random mazes of noise. The color schemes, the randomness, the lack of direction, the sounds, everything is a cacophony of noise and pain. Oof. Yeah, I know, I have to bring up Bubsy 3D. It's internet law. Thing is, when the internet already lectured me on the game that's bad, then I can't hate it because I know what it is, and I never encountered Bubsy 3D before I learned about it on the internet. So it couldn't disappoint me anymore. I didn't know of its existence, and when I did, I immediately knew all about it. Bubsy 2, on the other hand, was in a position to break my heart, so there. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Right, so video games based on properties have a bad reputation, but surprisingly I found every Harry Potter game based on Sorcerer's Stone, Secret Chambers, and Prisoner of Azkaban pretty awesome. The funny thing about these free book/movie adaptation video games is that for each system, the game was entirely different with a different genre. The Game Boy Color version was a Pokemon-esque RPG, the Game Boy Advance one was a 2D Zelda, the PlayStation 1 version was a 3D platformer, the PC version was more of a third-person shooter design, and the PlayStation 2/GameCube/Xbox version was a 3D Zelda game. And I loved all the versions of all three books, so how about that? But then Electronic Arts decided to drop all of these genres and game concepts and decided from Goblet of Fire on there should only be one type of game for each of the Harry Potter games. Or at least specific individual titles shared among all consoles. Even the Game Boy Advance and DS versions would be a watered down version of the main console games, instead of just doing their own thing like they did before. So for Goblet of Fire, instead of a Zelda-type RPG or a 3D platformer, now it was a hack-and-slash game, which is stupid when the hero never wields swords or axes, nor even have cool magic spells. Flipendo is good enough for an attack in a platformer, but unsatisfying for a game entirely based on combat, so that was lame. But then you get the Order of the Phoenix adaptation, and they took an even worse approach. The focus the new game was making it like a Wiimote minigame fest. The focus went entirely to recreating the characters and levels to resemble the movies as closely as possible, which meant there was very little content, and that meant it was mostly filler and lame Wiimote minigames and time wasters. Sure, the new games were a lot closer to the movies and more accurate and more logical, but also freaking boring. You'd think that the deeper you go into the Harry Potter series, the more action-packed stories would be the easiest to be adapted in video games, but for whatever insane reason, it ends up that the least action-packed books actually made the best video games. Sure, the early video games were kind of stupid. Usually the plot is that Harry goes to class, the stupid teacher forgot their textbook, and Harry's sent to the bottom of a volcano to fight monsters and retrieve the book, while the rest of the poor class is presumably just staring at a wall in class waiting for the player. But hey, at least that meant we had volcanoes to jump through and monsters to fight. Now you have a game based on the most action-packed book, filled with escaped convicts, school rebellion, murder attempts, the mentor attack, and an assault on the Ministry of Magic itself, yet all that action is reduced to just a bunch of lame boss fights, while most of the game you're just walking around fixing paintings and finding books for other students. And unlike the earlier games, these books and paintings aren't considered enough to be laying around in demonic monster caves, but are just on a couch in the halls of Hogwarts. Lame. Thank goodness the Lego Harry Potter games finally got the last few Harry Potter stories, the video game adaptation they deserved, so happy ending after all. And finally, Sonic Boom Shattered Crystals. Yes, this is my least favorite Sonic game of all. It's not technically the worst, but the thing is, with every Sonic game, there's always at least something interesting. You know, the Game Gear games might be primitive and stiff, but the music's amazing, and they're impressive for the hardware they're on. Sonic Schoolhouse is fascinated by concept. Sonic Labyrinth, well, while it doesn't wear out, it's welcome. It's quick and to the point. Sonic Rise of Lyric has some interesting ideas, and combat is fun for a bit. Sonic 06, oh, it's endlessly fascinating. You can watch the few bits are actually good. You can laugh at the bits that are terrible. You can be being perplexed by everything in between. At least with Sonic 06, my brain is always entertained and always has something to do. But Shattered Crystal, it's just a flat line. It's just nothing. I got nothing. Just why? Why does this exist? What am I supposed to get out of this? At least Sonic Drift Racing is novel and trying to do something unique for the Game Gear. At least Shuffle's an interesting experiment. At least Sonic 1 on the Game Boy Advance is the original still there. There's something. There's always something. Shattered Crystal has nothing. I'm completely blank. What? Why? What? The game is very hard. And not hard in a Dead Souls kind of way. Challenging but fair. Not in a Sonic 06 kind of way. Glitchy but and unresponsive. No, it's even worse. It's hard on a boss driver on the Sega Genesis kind of way. It's really easy, actually, but it's so boring and dull and meaningless that it's impossible to stay focused and you drift in and out of unconsciousness until you accidentally screw up and lose. It's just so boring. I just got 4 positives. I like the color palette of the first stage. Weak thing to entertain me, but there you go. I like the music in the volcano level, although I'm too bored to death that I give up on the game long before I get there, but still, it's nice that that exists. I would have liked the atmosphere of the crashed plane stage if the game was like Uncharted or Tomb Raider or something worthy of having a mysterious adventure atmosphere, but it's out of place in this game. And at very least the sequel, Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, that's a pretty decent game, so that one's good. But this one, ugh. People complain about flying knuckles, kissing corpses, stiff steering controls. Whatever. Boredom, that's the worst crime you can commit. So, those were my least favorite games. Not the worst games, but the least pleasant games I spent too much time trying to get something out of. Well, besides Tai 2, that was actually a cool game outside of that one moment. But yeah, so that concludes the vlog videos for this year. If I left your request out, I'm sorry. It's a bit overwhelming, this project. Well, till next year, bye-bye.